All right, so today we're going to be taking a look at Animal Farm by George Orwell. And you know how we do things here. We like to get straight to the point.
Mm.
So uh, is this book actually worth your time?
It really is. Animal Farm is one of those books that kind of punches above its weight, you know?
Oh,
It's short, it's engaging, and you'll definitely be thinking about it long after you've finished reading it.
so for our listeners out there, the ones who want to make sure they're spending their time reading the best stuff and love those like aha moments, the ones that kind of make you see the world a little differently. This book is one of those.
Definitely, yeah. It's deceptively simple on the surface, but all those layers of meaning and the insights into like human nature, that's where the magic happens.
I'm intrigued, but I got to be honest, like talking animals running a farm,
Hmm.
it sounds a little, well, kind of childish. I'm missing here.
Honestly, it's that like unexpectedness that makes it so brilliant. Orwell was really good at taking something that seems innocent and turning it into a powerful message. So in this case, he uses the animal fable to explore some pretty heavy themes like power corruption and the dangers of like totalitarian regimes.
So there's more to this than meets the eye.
Way more.
Okay.
Think of it this way. Orwell was really affected by what he saw going on in the world around him. You know, the rise of Stalinism in Russia, the spread of fascism in Europe. He was a democratic socialist and like really believed in equality and justice.
Yeah.
Animal Farm became his way of warning people about how easy it is for those ideals to get twisted and how even revolutions with the best intentions can go so wrong.
Okay, I'm starting to see why this book is considered a classic, but I still can't help but think, is it just a historical allegory? Like, is that all there is to it?
It's definitely rooted in the Russian Revolution, for sure. And yeah, you can see like clear parallels between the characters and some historical figures.
Right.
Old Major the Pig, who inspires the rebellion, is kind of like a mix of Marx and Lenin.
Okay.
Napoleon, the tyrannical pig who takes over, is basically Stalin. But Orwell's genius is how he goes beyond just like a simple one-to-one mapping, you know?
What do you mean?
Well, he uses those historical parallels to get at something much more universal, like the human tendency to fall into these patterns of power and abuse, regardless of ideology or time period.
Mm.
It's like he's holding up a mirror to human nature, showing us how even the most well-intentioned people can be corrupted by power.
Okay, now that's getting to the aha moment I was talking about.
Exactly. And it's those moments that make Animal Farm so relevant even today, you know?
No.
Think about all the ways we see those same dynamics playing out in the world,
Dang.
in politics and businesses, even in our personal relationships.
So it's like a cautionary tale, a reminder to be vigilant and aware of how power can be misused.
Exactly. And he does it in such a clever, engaging way. Orwell's writing is sharp, witty, and often like darkly humorous.
Yeah.
He doesn't shy away from showing the brutality and injustice that can happen when power goes unchecked.
Can you give me like a specific example of that, something that really shows this idea of power corrupting?
One of the most chilling examples is how the pigs gradually change the Seven Commandments, the principles of animalism, to suit their own needs.
Right.
At first, these commandments seem super noble, that things
Mhm.
like all animals are equal and no animal shall sleep in a bed. But slowly, subtly, those commandments get twisted.
Oh, I see where this is going.
Like the pigs start sleeping in beds, claiming it's necessary for their intellectual work, and when the other animals protest, Squealer, Napoleon's propagandist, convinces them that they're misremembering the rule.
Wow.
The chilling part is how easily the other animals accept these changes, how they allow themselves to be manipulated by the pig's rhetoric.
That is chilling. It's like watching history repeat itself, but with farm animals. And it makes you wonder, how easily could we be manipulated in the same way?
That's the question Orwell wants us to ask ourselves. He's forcing us to confront the uncomfortable truth that we're all susceptible to manipulation, especially when it comes from those in positions of authority.
Okay, you've definitely piqued my interest. But before we go any further, I think it's important to address something for our listener. Animal Farm is often compared to another one of Orwell's famous books, 1984. Can you talk a bit about how they're similar and how they're different?
That's a great point. They both explore similar themes of totalitarianism, propaganda, and the suppression of individual freedom. But while 1984 paints a very bleak and futuristic picture of a society under constant surveillance, Animal Farm is more allegorical and satirical. It uses the animal fable format to make its point in a way that's both thought-provoking and entertaining.
So if someone's looking for a more accessible entry point into Orwell's work, Animal Farm might be a good place to start.
Absolutely. And it's a much shorter read than 1984, which I know is a plus for busy readers. But don't let the brevity fool you. Animal Farm is packed with insights that will stay with you long after you finish the last page.
So we've talked about the historical context, the universal themes, and the comparison to 1984. But I'm still curious, are there other books out there that tackle similar ideas in a way that might resonate with our listener?
If you're intrigued by the animal allegory aspect and the exploration of leadership and community, I'd recommend Watership Down by Richard Adams.
Okay.
It's a bit longer than Animal Farm, but it's a captivating tale about a group of rabbits searching for a new home and facing various challenges along the way.
That sounds interesting. I've always loved stories about animals, and the idea of them representing human society is fascinating.
Yeah, it's a powerful way to explore those deeper themes without being too, preachy or anything. And Watership Down does a brilliant job of creating a complex and believable rabbit society with its own rules, hierarchies, and struggles.
I'm adding that to my list.
Yeah.
Any other recommendations?
If you're looking for something that tackles the idea of truth and how it can be manipulated, I'd recommend The Master and Margarita by Mikhail Bulgakov. It's a bit more surreal and fantastical than Animal Farm, but it also explores themes of censorship power and the struggle for individual expression.
Ooh, that sounds right up my alley.
Yeah.
I love books that make you question everything you thought you knew.
The Master and Margarita will definitely do that. It's a wild ride through Soviet Moscow, complete with talking cats, magic shows, and a visit from the devil himself.
Wow, I'm sold. We'll definitely have to do a deep dive on that one sometime. But for now, let's get back to Animal Farm. We've talked about its strengths, but are there any criticisms or limitations that our listeners should be aware of?
One criticism that's often leveled at Animal Farm is that it's a bit too simplistic in its portrayal of the Russian Revolution.
Okay.
Some people argue that it reduces complex historical events to a black and white morality tale.
I can see that. It's important to remember that history is rarely so clear-cut.
Exactly. But I think it's important to remember that Orwell was writing a satire, not a history textbook. His goal was to highlight certain truths about power and corruption, and he used the Russian Revolution as a framework for that exploration.
So it's not meant to be a definitive historical account, but rather a thought-provoking commentary on human nature.
Exactly. And I think that's what makes it so enduring. The specifics of the Russian Revolution might fade with time, but the underlying themes of power manipulation and the dangers of blind obedience are as relevant today as they were in Orwell's time.
All right. I'm convinced Animal Farm is definitely going on my reading list, but let's get to the heart of it. For our listener who's still on the fence, what would you say is the biggest reason to give this book a try?
For me, it's this. Animal Farm shows us how easily even the most well-intentioned ideals can be corrupted by power. It's a warning to be vigilant, to question authority, and to never stop thinking critically about the world around us.
That's a powerful message, and it sounds like one that's worth taking the time to explore.
Absolutely. And who knows, maybe it will even inspire you to make a few changes in your own life.
Ooh, that's a great segue into our final thoughts on Animal Farm. But before we get there, let's take a quick break. We'll be right back with more insights and recommendations for our listener.
Think about it this way. Are there any groups that you're a part of where those same dynamics might be at play? Maybe it's a workplace, a social club, even a family dynamic.
Oh, you're really making me think here. It's easy to see these things, on a grand scale, like in politics or history, but to bring it down to our everyday lives, that's where it gets really powerful.
Exactly. And that's what makes Animal Farm so timeless.
Yeah.
It's not just a story about a bunch of animals on a farm.
Right.
It's a reflection of the human condition, the ways we interact with each other and how power can corrupt even the best intentions.
So we've established that Animal Farm is thought-provoking, relevant, and even a little bit unsettling. But for a listener who might be thinking, okay, this all sounds pretty interesting, but is it really worth adding another book to my already overflowing reading list? What would you say?
I'd say that Animal Farm is a short read, but it's definitely a powerful one. It's the kind of book that can change the way you see the world. And honestly, in today's world where misinformation and manipulation are everywhere, I think it's more important than ever to be aware of these dynamics.
Yeah, you're preaching to the choir here. I'm all about those books that, make you think, challenge your assumptions.
Yeah.
But I also know that our listener appreciates those little aha moments, those nuggets of insight that you can take with you and apply to your own life. Does Animal Farm deliver on that front?
Totally. Remember the example we talked about earlier with the pigs changing the 7 commandments?
Yeah.
That's a classic aha moment. It makes you realize how subtly and insidiously power can be abused and how easily we can be manipulated if we're not paying attention.
That's a great point. It's like a warning sign, a reminder to always question what we're told and to think for ourselves.
Exactly, and that's just one example. Animal Farm is full of those moments that make you stop and think, wow, that's so true. I never thought of it that way before.
Okay, you've convinced me I'm adding Animal Farm to my reading list. And for our listener, if you're still not sure, I'd say this. Think about the time you spend scrolling through social media, watching the news, or even just listening to conversations around you. How much of what you're taking in is filtered through someone else's agenda?
That's such a good point. We're just bombarded with information all the time, and it's so easy to just passively consume it without questioning the source or the motive behind it.
And that's where Animal Farm comes in. It's like a training manual for critical thinking. It helps you,
Yeah.
develop those mental muscles that allow you to see through the BS and make your own judgments.
It's like Orwell is saying, don't be a sheep. Question everything. Think for yourself.
I love that. So to sum it all up, Animal Farm by George Orwell, short, sharp, and shockingly relevant to our lives today.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
And that brings us to the end of our deep dive into Animal Farm. But before we let you go, we want to leave you with something to ponder.
Remember those Animal Farm dynamics we talked about? Take a look around, at your own world. Are there any groups you're a part of where those same power imbalances or like subtle manipulations might be at play?
It's a question worth asking ourselves, and it's definitely something we can all benefit from being more aware of.
Absolutely, because as Orwell so brilliantly showed us, the seeds of tyranny can be sown in the most unexpected places.
Well said. And on that note, we'll leave you to ponder those deeper questions. Thanks for joining us on this journey into the world of Animal Farm. We hope it's inspired you to pick up the book and discover its brilliance for yourself. And remember, even if Animal Farm doesn't end up on your reading list right in the second, the most important takeaway is that awareness.
Exactly. Start paying attention to those power dynamics, to the ways language can be used to manipulate and control. It's like Orwell is giving us a secret decoder ring for understanding the world around us.
I love that analogy. It's like once you see it, you can't unsee it.
Okay.
And that's the power of a truly great book. It stays with you long after you finish reading it.
Yeah, and it can spark conversations, challenge assumptions, even inspire change.
That's what we're all about here on The Deep Dive. We want to empower you to be informed, engaged, and maybe even a little bit subversive.
Because who knows, maybe we'll be the one to write the next Animal Farm and wake up a whole new generation.
Ooh, Bill, that's a challenge. To all our listeners out there, we want to hear from you. What are your thoughts on Animal Farm? Have you read it? Did it resonate with you?
Share your insights, your aha moments, and even your disagreements. Let's keep this conversation going.
Because as we learned today, the more we question, the more we learn, and the more empowered we become.
So keep diving deep, keep exploring, and keep those minds questioning.
And until next time, happy reading. And remember, even if Animal Farm isn't like at the top of your reading list right now, the most important thing is just that awareness,
Right, just start paying attention to those power dynamics, the ways that language can be used to manipulate and control people. It's like Orwell is giving us a secret decoder ring for understanding the world.
I love that analogy. It's like once you see it, you just can't unsee it. And that's the power of like a really great book. It stays with you even after you're done reading it.
Totally, and it can spark conversations, challenge those assumptions, and even inspire change.
That's what we're all about here on The Deep Dive.
Yeah.
We want to empower you to be informed, engaged, and maybe even a little subversive.
Because who knows, maybe you'll be the one to write the next Animal Farm and wake up a whole generation.
Ooh, now that's a challenge.
Well,
For all of our listeners out there, we want to hear from you. What are your thoughts on Animal Farm? Have you read it? Did it resonate with you?
share your insights, your aha moments, even your disagreements. Let's keep this conversation going.
Because as we learned today, the more we question, the more we learn, and the more empowered we become.
So keep diving deep, keep exploring, and keep those minds questioning.
And until next time, happy reading.